Major support for Carolina Business Review is provided by Grant Thornton. Operating in more than 100 countries, our tax, audit, and advisory professionals specialize in helping companies unlock their growth potential. Novant Health, bringing you world-class technology, clinicians, and care when and where you need it. And Sunoco, a global manufacturer of consumer and industrial packaging products and provider of packaging services with more than 300 operations in 35 countries.
Happy Easter and happy spring. Welcome again to this program. For 27 years on in every market in North and South Carolina, we are the most widely watched source of Carolina business, policy, and public affairs. I'm Chris William, and thank you so much for supporting the program over the years. This time on our dialogue, as always, we will chat about those things important to know and what is going on in this region. And later on, who doesn't like to take in the Biltmore in Asheville? Well, it's much more than just a pretty face. And later on, Biltmore boss Jack Cecil joins us again from Biltmore Farms.
Gratefully acknowledging support by Blue Cross Blue Shield of South Carolina. Please visit us at southcarolinablues.com. The Duke Endowment, a private foundation enriching communities in the Carolinas through higher education, healthcare, rural churches, and children's services. Barings, a leading global asset management firm dedicated to meeting the evolving investment and capital needs of its clients. Learn more at barings.com. On this edition of Carolina Business Review, Ollie Chandhok from the Triad Business Journal, Patrick Mason of the Center for Carolina Living, and special guest Jack Cecil, president of Biltmore Farms, LLC.
Hello, welcome again to our program. Gentlemen, happy spring. It's kind of exciting in Carolinas in the spring, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Ollie, let's start with you. So, you know, Amazon came out last year and everybody was talking about H2Q and where they're going to go, and the Carolinas were on the short list, and then Charlotte got dropped off the short list, and the Triangle is on the short list, and the Triad also made some bids. And one of the very hoped for and proposed spots coming out of the Triad was that Randolph County Megasite, Greensboro, Randolph County. So now what? If the Triad doesn't make the not so short list, is what I call it, what are you going to do with that site? What are developers and leaders going to do in the Triad with that?
Sure. That site was actually pegged for a major auto manufacturer as well. Toyota Mazda was looking around, right, and they ended up in North Alabama. So the site just, you know, we may have missed out, but amidst all the prep and all the work that went into it, we have a OEM ready site that has been heavily marketed and continues to be. So we hold this in the Triad as a really valuable asset. And you know, I think our economic developers are reaching out to advanced manufacturing. So it's not just a focus on an automotive manufacturer, but it could be even as distant as an appliance manufacturer, those kind of things. So we're certainly positioned well with this site. It's just we got to think outside of the norm a little bit and shift our gears away from this automotive manufacturer. Now with Amazon, you know, we put together the bid and made a big play for that, but I think it was more of a regional play along with Raleigh and Charlotte. So it's positioned well. We'll see how it plays out in the next few years.
You know, do leaders in the Triad, do they hope it's going to be one and done and someone will take the site, or will it be parceled out?
I think the focus is to be parceled out. Now, I'm sure they wouldn't turn away somebody that could take over the entire site, but there are actually two peripheral sites that almost could serve as feeder sites into that major Greensboro-Randolph megasite. So, you know, I think with a major OEM going and being situated in that Greensboro-Randolph site, you've got Chatham, Siler City, 20, 30 minutes down the road. And then there's been a new site pegged in Person County, north of Raleigh. So they could all kind of feed together and work together. So it doesn't necessarily answer your question, but you know, I think they're not going to turn anybody away, regardless of size.
You know, any way you look at it, though, the momentum around the growth in the Carolinas has been pretty nonstop, even when we've made some questionable policy decisions in the state houses in Raleigh and Columbia. Pat, this idea that whatever we do, if we zig or zag on policy issues, or maybe not make a good decision when it comes to growth and development, that still migration will bail us out, quote unquote. That's my term. And I think your group has projected 468,000 new residents in 2018 for the regional Carolinas. Is that an accurate number?
And that comes off of basic IRS data, and they measure how many people move every year. In the year 2015-16, their latest data, there was a spike of 50% more people moving to the Carolinas. And so our projection from 17 and 18, we added maybe 5%, 6% onto that to get to the 468. So we're pushing up against 500,000 new faces, men, women, and children, all ages, landing here for one reason or another. More than half of them are over the age of 50. So we know that the boomer generation is mobile now. Mm-hmm. Their portfolios look good. They can sell their house in Yankee land, and they can capture the value in the Carolinas.
So, that's not all good, right? I mean, managing that kind of growth, that's like taking some pretty big bites of food and not being able to swallow it at all. And I would guess you've got healthcare issues, you've got transportation issues, you've got infrastructure issues.
Sure.
And can we front end load the growth and the development that we need to do to be able to catch all of that?
Sure. Well, that's the issue. So as this influx of people come in, the economy buoys up, the tax revenues buoy up, and in a conservative environment, in those legislatures, they say, let's cut taxes because we've got all this revenue flying in. Well, I would say that if at the point you start to look at the growth factors, how do we ensure the 100-year growth quality of life? To have the infrastructure for education and highways and healthcare be in place. So that would be the last the last choice would be to lower taxes, to cut taxes at this point. Leave taxes the same. We're already low taxed compared to where the folks are coming from. So we're a very fair and valuable place to be, and will continue to be that. But I think you're right. The idea of funding infrastructure at all different aspects of it really is critical.
What kind of conversation goes on in the Triad around this?
One of the things that Pat just said, the infrastructure really is would be high on my list to be concerned about as we see an influx of migrants. In the Triad, we're out ahead of it a little bit. I think some of the both Winston and Greensboro have made major steps in completing the urban loops around both cities. Greensboro is 7 or 8 miles away from completing that loop. And so we're prepared for that, for the influx of folks. Now, this may require a major employer to plant their flag, but I think we're positioned nicely for those kind of things.
Can you fund it? You feel like the government's up there feel confident enough that they can fund it by, as Pat says, maybe you have to raise taxes. Counties might have to raise taxes.
Right. I think I think our state is ready. They're ready for somebody like that, for a major employer, something to continue to fund. We're in the right place, very well. Specifically in the Triad, I mean, everything seems to be in order.
Yeah. Okay, gentlemen. Stay with us. We're going to bring our guest on in just a moment. Coming up next 3 weeks on the program, they're going to be good programs. Of course, I feel that way because I'm sitting right here in this chair. But the Secretary of Commerce for North Carolina will be our guest on our program. His name is Tony Copeland. Had the job about a year or so now. Seems to have some information that needs to be disseminated to the public. Pat Rogers from Rogers Construction, one of the largest construction operators in the Carolinas, woman-owned, by the way. Pat will be here. And also Ward Nye from Martin Marietta Materials. They can't keep up with all the demand for rock and stone. It is a busy time in that business as well. The House of Biltmore and the Cecil family are certainly world-renowned, but beyond being an iconic tourism destination, and oh yeah, by the way, the largest private home in this nation, what really goes on, and how does that tremendous goodwill of the family and the Biltmore DNA that they've built that, how does that affect the region? We are glad to welcome back to the program Biltmore Farms President and Chief Executive Officer Jack Cecil. Mr. President, welcome back.
Nice to be here, Chris. I love it.
Jack, obviously you front and center the iconic home that we all know in Western North Carolina and Asheville, but around the idea of the home, you have taken this idea of development and community design to really a new level. When you plan out, Jack, the next 10, 15, or as your predecessors did, the next 100 years,
right.
How do you make sure that you are planning for also a slowdown? We're in the 9th year of this expansion. it's going to slow down sometime. We don't know what it's going to look like. So how do you make sure that you've safeguarded against that?
I think that the first part of the question is how do you plan for it? It's not just one single industry. So we look at not only an educational perspective or a healthcare perspective, and it's the job creation. So we have set up the company that we can play in all those different facets, if you will. I think the other side of the question is, what did we learn from the past recession? Don't leverage up your balance sheet, garner cash, and just be prepared for the unexpected. And we have slowed down our development of homes. We were at one time, 2005, 2006, 110 homes a year. Now we're at 30. We're spending more of our time and capital on recurring revenue, building hotels, office buildings, retail shopping centers, and apartments. And those don't take the hit as quickly as the home building business does if the downturn, I will say if, but when it comes.
So when you do all that, is there a master plan for Western North Carolina, Asheville, and the region?
I think there's a master plan for the region in the sense of the conversation you had about tourism. And if you went to Asheville 30 years ago, you'd see more plywood than you would of bricks and mortar. And over that time frame, we have been fortunate enough that the tourists that come to Asheville are typically more highly educated and more affluent. And so the trick has been how you take advantage of that in an opportunistic way, because you're a tourist first, you typically come with your house second. Third, we hope that you bring your portfolio and your interest in the civic responsibility, or maybe even bring your business. And so if you think of Asheville going forward, you're lucky in the Triad to have these large megasites. We don't. We have to think through a small 100 to 150,000 square foot footprint of a building, and you can have the larger ones in Henderson County. But I think that fits with the community, fits with the topography. So the idea is, when we've moved from the brawn to the brain economy, is think of the intellect and educated worker that's inside that building and the value of the widget that they are producing. So if you can move to a higher paid, highly compensated worker who's producing a widget that's $umpteen-thousand per widget rather than a low margin item, I think that's the future of Western North Carolina.
Yeah.
So Jack, you mentioned some of the development is focused around retail. With the rise of Amazon and these e-commerce giants, what considerations do you take as you're developing space and multi-use, mixed-use stuff? How do you treat your retail tenants, your retail clients, the prospects, I guess?
Cautiously. Yeah. We know we don't. None of us know the true effect of Amazon.
Sure.
Right? So we've tried to create an experience and create a community that you come there for a different reason. And you come for an education, like Western Carolina University has 600 students that come through Town Square on a daily basis. There's restaurants, there's a movie theater. The way we've aggregated the buildings and its walkability, that's why you come. It's not necessarily to go shop at Loft or Altered States or Sensibilities. And it's, you put all of them together and you think of what would downtown Greensboro and downtown Winston-Salem have to make them successful in the past, or High Point.
Are there certain types of retailers that you prefer or pursue, or is it just let's map out our plan and see who takes an interest?
Strategically, we think through what's the gaps in the market. So when we started Town Square, we would go after regional and national retailers or restaurants that weren't in the market. So we have that one and only. And so Hickory Tavern and Brick's Pizza, they're common names in the Carolinas, but they are still the only operation stores they have in Asheville in Town Square. And then you mix and match like an REI and an Orvis, and then you play to the outdoor environment. And then you think, well, the guys that love to fish or mountain bike are the same ones that don't want to work in a high-tech environment. So that's your labor component, that's your higher educated workforce. So you try to sort of map it out.
Yeah, you talk about the 460, almost 500,000 new people coming every year. Some of the attributes, like you mentioned, that 12% of them in our surveys tell us they want to start or move a business.
Right.
That in itself is a job creator. They're going to hire at least one person, let's say. And out of the households, if 12% of them actually make that a fruition, that's wonderful. The other thing that's sort of in between the lines, and I talked to our governors, I want to see the line item on your budget that says people willing to work for free. Be in the church basement, be at the Red Cross, be the volunteers doing the school, helping out in schools. And so the retirees have those skills. and they're looking for those alternative.
So there's
aspects.
a question in there, I know. There's a question in there for
There
Jack.
is a question. Well, the question I have is in Western North Carolina, which is really mostly rural, of course, and there's a population there of indigenous population who we care about. Is there a thought process for taking and making sure there's not a divide between the rural and the urban growth and this whole growth thing?
Oh, no. There's a balance. There's a bridge, and everyone's codependent. If you look at a regional economy, it's called the Triad or the Triangular Metro line for a region.
Right.
And our MSA is growing. So maybe downtown Asheville has certain job characteristics, but you think through the farm to fork connection, you think through the breweries, you think through the restaurants that are in Asheville. And I know through my hat at the Duke Endowment and through the Institute for Emerging Issues, we're looking at this rural-urban situation. And 52% of the people who work in Mecklenburg County come from outside the county.
But
so we're all, it's a codependency.
Is that bad though, Jack?
No, it's great.
Rural and urban are rural and urban for a reason. They're two separate areas,
That's
aren't
right.
they?
And there's a metro region, and I think the real hard decisions are where the two metro regions don't connect. In the counties that are middle, that's too far to drive to one region or too far to go to the other. You look at the Tryon Equestrian Center. That's really helping Charlotte, Asheville, and Spartanburg, and that's a mega investment. But you can see what's happening.
So when
they're coming together.
As you were describing Asheville as it is now and how you see it in the near term, is Asheville, so Asheville's in western North Carolina, you said it's mostly rural, and you got to think a little differently about the economic development of the building because of just the nature of it. What does Asheville look like in 50 years? Does it look like Seattle? Is it kind of an alternative lifestyle, bigger city in the Carolinas? Is that what it wants to be?
I think it's a combination of all of the above. We will never be a large city. Topography and other issues will prevent it. So you grow density, and you grow you work towards the higher income jobs. You play off the advantage of the tolerance and the lifestyle that's in Asheville, and that plays to, in our generation, it was Boulder. That was a cool place.
Right.
Now it's Asheville. And it's intriguing, Pat knows this, but if you look at the demographic bubbles, we used to be 55 to 75, and Henderson County is like the oldest county in the state. Now you have this wonderful demographic bubble of 24 to 35.
Yes.
And they're bringing their intellect, their creativity, their entrepreneurism, and they're matching up with the retirees. It's really a beautiful situation, and we're lucky. We're very lucky.
So, Jack, I wanted to go back to the divide, I guess, the urban and rural divide, and one of the challenges that we have in the Triad is rural healthcare. We have several hospitals that are either shutting down or close to shutting down and being bought by larger systems. One of the things that's bubbled up in our region, and I'm sure in other areas, are these membership-based satellite healthcare clinics. It's almost like a retail health clinic. Is that part of your portfolio? Is that part of the game where you get involved in developing those type of things?
We don't as a family from the sense of in that development physically, but through our had very close involvement with Mission Hospital over 3-4 generations now. We've watched that organization grow, and through the association with MAHEC, which is the AHEC outreach of the UNC health system, that's allowed us to penetrate in the very rural areas of North Carolina, or Western North Carolina. So you match a very, very high quality, low cost mothership, which is Mission proper, and have the affiliations with Transylvania Hospital, McDowell Hospital. We've made tremendous investments in all those. You keep the patients locally when it's responsible to do that. And you upgrade all the quality care in these smaller rural hospitals, and that's your first stopping. That's your first stop. And then if you need to go on to Mission, which is pretty close to a quaternary hospital now, and we've been all sorts of accolades for some of the highest quality and the lowest cost in the country now.
Yeah, Ron Paulus was here about 2 months ago.
So you know about it. Ron's done a fabulous
CEO.
job with that.
Yeah. In the staying with the big picture, we mentioned the plan, the long-term vision for West North Carolina. If you were to, from your vantage point, see a priority, top 1 or 2 things that really need to be focused on to ensure long-term quality of life?
Right. I'm taking my advantage of the Duke Endowment and the Institute of Emerging Issues. It's really all about the 0 to 8, K through 3.
Okay.
And if you make an investment in prenatal care, so this is where healthcare and education come together. If you make the investment in prenatal care and you have a healthy birth, you send them to an appropriate daycare and then to kindergarten, and they have all the opportunities to succeed in reading at a third grade level. At the end of third grade, your math from Harvard and UNC's Frank Porter Graham just tell you right then that the opportunity and the likelihood of that child to succeed in life is exponentially higher than if they don't come out with a third grade reading level.
Right. Is there enough light and heat being shined on that statistic and leaning into it?
I think there is, yeah. Because it's coming at it from multiple sectors now. I mean, you hear it from the business sector. Jim Goodnight and a number of his friends and I'm involved with that sort of business coalition. As I said, I hear it at the endowment, I hear it at the Institute of Emerging Issues, and there's a great coalition of daycare providers that have come together in Buncombe County, and we've helped support that.
Let me move you to the Triangle. You sit on the RTP Foundation board.
I do.
No surprise that Research Triangle Park has done wonderful things over the last half of a century plus, but now there's a new plan in place, and that new plan has to configure to what the future looks like. So for a swath of land like RTP and a lot of open space, what's the future? What's the right call? What's the right way to make that thing move?
You appropriately point out it has been very successful for that part of the state and the entire state, I might add. But life has changed, and people's interests in walkability and the sense of community have changed. And so now we've taken about 100 and maybe 150 acre swath of land right at Davis Drive at I-40 and trying to create a downtown, a place, a here where people want to come and it's, I know it's overused, but it's a live, work, play. And there will be restaurants, there'll be retail, there'll be apartments, there'll be entertainment, there'll be offices. It'll all come together because we need a downtown. And the nice thing, we'll then connect that to the light rail system. So you can go throughout the entire triangle.
And marry up nicely with Chatham Park, which is coming up out of be a neighbor to RTP. Really.
And I think that's 12,000 acres and the opportunity to have multiple million square feet of office space. It's a nice marriage.
It's a hot topic in the Triad too. Is we're the Triad, but we have three downtowns, prominent downtowns, and the focus is on walkability and storefront living and restaurant dining, all that kind of stuff that gives you that downtown feel. Winston-Salem is a couple steps ahead. Some of my buddies in Greensboro might cringe at that, but there are good things happening, and it sounds like RTP is trying to pursue some of that.
Well, and to follow up on that, Jack, how do you get Durham and Raleigh already compete now, and Durham decidedly has an edge in the cool factor now.
Yeah, it does.
So when you plop one more competitor in there and it ends up being RTP, then you got three very progressive thinking areas trying to compete for this new population, whatever it looks like.
And I'd add a fourth, and that's Chapel Hill. But I would say they're not competitive. Right. I would say they're symbiotic.
Yeah.
Because they all offer something slightly different than the other. As you mentioned, Durham may have the cool factor. I would say there's places in Raleigh that are fairly cool, and so in Chapel Hill. So I think if you look at it as a region, I believe that's why and I put my head on the foundation, why we're still in the hunt for Amazon.
Yeah. Let's change. We've got less than 2 minutes left, and I want to ask you this. You are dyslexic.
I
am. You represent almost 20% of the population. These dyslexic kids, and I'm speaking from some facts and some research and also personal experience, these dyslexic kids get lost in the system because people don't know what to do with a large part of the population. How did you make it? How do dyslexics able to get what they need in a public school system that's trying not to be one size fits all, but right now kind of sort of is?
I think that there's a point in one's life that it's the grit and the sheer determination take over. And to understand, like many things in life, you understand and you play to your strengths and you overcome your weaknesses. And my strength happens to be that I can connect dots that many people don't see. And it's the bigger, broader picture, and I really become frustrated with minutia. And we have 4 sons, and the 2 bookends are highly dyslexic, like I am.
How did they get an advantage to make sure that they unlock that creative?
There's a program in Asheville called the Key School, and when I went to school in Asheville, it was not there, and so it helped them through the Orton-Gillingham process to retrain their minds to take advantage of their natural gifts and their talents. It's extremely bright. And so the oldest one went through the Key School, went to 5 years in boarding school in New England, and went to Dartmouth, and now has a startup company in Durham called Orchard Systems. And it's just because he sees the opportunity. And the youngest one's a junior in high school, and he's now stumbled into engineering and nice cars. But it's because he sees the nice car and doesn't want to do. The math is hard for him, but he can see the end product because he can design it.
And you figured out how to teach that. And I'd like to have you back, talk more about that. I'm sorry we're out of time, but always nice to have you on the program.
Thank you very much.
This is nice to see
you. And
you.
you wonder why I have a green pin, because it's multi-sensory learning.
Nice to see you. Good to see you, Pat.
Good to
Thanks,
see you,
Ollie.
Thank you, Chris.
Until next week, I'm Chris William. Happy spring.
Major funding for Carolina Business Review was provided by the Duke Endowment, Bearings, Grant Thornton, Novant Health, Sunoco, Blue Cross Blue Shield of South Carolina, and by viewers like you. Thank you. Promotional consideration provided by Business North Carolina Magazine. For more information, visit carolinabusinessreview.org.